reporters, but
Yeah.
like, you wonder if part of it's just he's so used to being so rich, and people just kind of kowtow to him.
Yeah.
That this is such like a slap in the face. Like, how dare you? Don't you know who I am?
Yeah.
And like, I'm gonna get my revenge any way I can. Just to, like, you screw me over, I'm gonna piss you off.
Yeah. This is starting to get good. So I hit record 30 seconds ago.
Oh.
But okay, so like, hey everybody, welcome to Wheel of the State. It's so good to have you here. It's so good to be back recording with Ben. Man, I really missed doing this. It was because like, okay, you guys don't see it from your perspective, but I haven't recorded with Ben in 3 weeks, a month.
It's been 3 weeks.
Yeah. And it was just,
that's crazy.
I know. And it was like, work has been insane because basically my boss got fired and then I had to fire the guy, our dock lead, which was really, really sad, but like he couldn't pass his background check and we had to let him go. And God, and it was so sad, but like even that, like, kind of has something with like the direction I want to take this episode. Cause, we were talking about Kanye West and I know I've been wanting to talk about that since the last time we were recorded, or since it happened. But anyway, so, sorry, I'm going off in a million different directions.
So much to say.
Work got crazy. I've been working obscene hours and just haven't had the energy or haven't been able to keep up with anything. And so that's why it's been so long for me. And Ben did this badass solo episode. My favorite part of the episode was the cover art that you did.
That was probably my favorite too.
It was so funny.
And I kept on kind of muting myself while I was playing the clips because there are times, I think, especially in the reaction videos, where I could hear like breathing because. So I'm like, I don't want to be that mouth breather who's like, while, like this attractive woman's talking about economics. And I'm just panting over here in the corner.
The thing that I liked about that is sort of the message that it sends out. I know you weren't trying to do this on purpose or anything, but like, it just,
I'm human too.
You're human, but like this is an authentic podcast. Like we're being authentic people. You know what I mean? And it's like, I mean, you and I have hung out outside of this podcast, and like, Ben, you're no different on camera than you are off camera, And
I mean, that's the same for you, but I think most of our audience, I mean, we know a lot of them in person. So, that's really cool to be able to have that authenticity of,
for sure.
Especially for those, because I know the people that we know that listen to this podcast, if we were
bullshitting on here,
they'd call us out.
Yeah.
Heartbeat.
Yeah.
Heck, I think we'd call each other out in a heartbeat.
Oh, for sure. Like, we're all libertarians,
Andy,
dude.
Who are you trying to impress?
Dude, we're all libertarians. We are waiting for somebody to fuck up so we can throw them under the bus.
Yeah, that's true.
Just like Ron Paul and Ronald Reagan. Like, as soon as Ronald Reagan.
It's probably more on the ideology side than on.
Well, yeah, but what I mean, like rigidly sticking to principles, you know,
true.
It's like if those principles are so important to us that the first time somebody fucks up on them, we're like, fuck that guy. He's not one of us,
We're like, dude, what the hell?
Yeah. So like, and that's what I love about that Ron Paul moment with, the
Giuliani,
the Ron Paul moment before the Ron Paul moment with, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan puts out his first budget. And like Ron Paul was a Ronald Reagan guy all the way. And he's like, I support that man. He's principled, blah, blah, blah. And then Reagan released his first budget and Ronald Reagan looked at that and goes, oh, so he was full of shit the entire time. And
I don't remember, did Ron Paul go on a rant about that?
He
just have to look that up.
He immediately withdrew his support of Ronald Reagan after he released his first budget. Because in that budget was not shrinking the military, increasing spending, expanding the size of the government. And Ron Paul was like, fuck that. You're a fucking charlatan.
Well, he was the big drug war on drugs, was it?
Yeah.
Wasn't that started under? Yeah. And that's, I mean, look what look how that turned out.
Well, you saw Trump's speech, right, where he was talking
Yeah.
about putting drug
Let's
dealers to death.
Well, like China, like
Yeah.
he's like, oh, that
Yeah.
like he's all like anti-China, and then he's like, but when it comes to like ruling a country, I really like, I
Hmm.
mean,
Maybe let's not
Justin.
listen to the country that like destroy their little girls' feet because of some stupid, outdated cultural thing, like with foot binding and
Or
stuff. Let's not listen to dumbasses that do shit like that.
Well, and the fact that it was Justin Trudeau was also talked about. I think it was about pandemic restrictions, and he was talking about how he kind of wishes they were more like China because he could move faster in response.
Yeah,
And
he's
it's
talking
like
about a country that welded people in their homes.
there's a reason why there are we put chains and shackles on our government for a reason.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're experiencing the problems we are today is because the central government's kind of broken out of those shackles.
Hmm.
So but that it shows you Trump's true colors.
Hmm.
He's a totalitarian
Yeah.
style president. Do what I say.
Hmm. He is the answer to why I didn't go back to being a Republican when I was brought out of the left, you know? And it's because both sides are fucking monsters. You know, there
Yeah.
is no lesser of two evils when we're talking about the Democrats and the Republicans.
Well,
You
that's
know,
usually when I'm either reading the news or I'm watching like YouTube, and if I see anything that shouts out it's the Republicans' fault, it's the Democrats' fault, it
mm-hmm,
points the finger at one of the parties,
mm-hmm.
I'm like delete or like next
Yeah,
because it's just going to be partisan. It's like
yeah,
you don't understand anything you point at the other party and you yell at them for doing it.
y- y-
Your party is either currently doing it or has already done it or
yeah,
will be doing it tomorrow.
yeah. That's what I loved about whenever the Snowden like report came out, or whenever that was leaked about Prism and about the NSA spying on American citizens and stuff like that. Whenever that happened, dude, the Republicans got a boner against Obama because they're like, see, this is what Obama does, blah 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 blah. I was like, this was started during the Bush administration,
Yeah.
you fucking retards.
Patriot Act, like
Yeah,
when was that pushed through? Like
exactly.
you
This
kind
is
of
just
wonder,
this is just the next iteration of the Patriot Act. You guys started it.
do you think in like, again, we're just kind of going all over the place, but in that kind of regards, do you think that people are that like short-minded, like they forget about where things came from, or do you think
Oh
that
yeah.
they just pretend that never happened and it only the things that happened yesterday are relevant? Like
Yeah. Well,
I
it's that separation, like, because you and I had the same things about like World War II or the Vietnam War or like stuff like the civil rights movement. You and I have an idea of what it was like, but we don't really know what it was like because we weren't alive then, and so there is an element of it just not being a real thing to us because we didn't witness it firsthand.
right.
you know Man, I feel like I sound like Ian Crossland. I took a couple hits of a pre-roll before before I got on here. Now I'm like, oh shit, do I sound like that long-haired hippie dumbass on Timcast?
You know what, you can tell he's a genuine person who
Yeah.
really cares, but when he kind of goes on these like far left tirades of
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, that's not reality.
And
Like,
he ends everything with like you can tell he's really hung up on anarchy, and maybe he's really struggling with that question because he always tends to steer it in a direction of, and see, that's why we need government.
well, but what about China? What about like if we're not there, like China's gonna just take over the world? It's
Yeah.
like, China wants to maybe have a lot more influence economically around the
Mm-hmm.
world, but they've never shown any desire to install military
and
bases
these
all
and
over the
all these
world.
people know that if they go after the world, they're gonna go bankrupt. They know that that's not sustainable, so there is plenty of incentive not to expand yourself too much.
Right. I mean, you just have to look at us and to
Yeah.
see how that turns out.
Mm-hmm. Did you watch Clint Russell's debate with that fucking neolib guy?
I could get about halfway through,
It was a
and
difficult listen.
I could tell that Clint would really try to be respectful
Yeah.
initially,
But
but
yeah, but there is a certain point in time when you could tell that Clint's patience just fucking evaporated, and he was like,
it's
"I'm not doing this anymore.
it
Listen,
was
man, your
like
ideas are fucking stupid."
it was like having a debate with a 4-year-old
Yeah.
over politics,
Yeah, and I've had those
because
debates
it's like it's so surface
with
level, and
4-year-olds.
I'm yeah, with 4-year-olds and
Yeah,
adults.
I go to a daycare and I'm like, "You're pro-choice, you fucking fascist." Like he's like, "I'm for."
I'm trying to remember, there was what they got into. I think it was gun control, and
Mhm.
I kind of wish Clint would have hit him back a little bit more on, do you think that guns kill people or do you think people kill people?
Mhm.
Because the way you're talking, it's like a gun walked into the school and started shooting.
Yeah.
And if you're going to attack the manufacturers because the gun went rogue and started killing people,
Mhm.
then yeah, you can sue them. But I mean, Clinton did a good job of making it like, hey, the guns are working as intended. So how do you go after a manufacturer for a product that's working as advertised?
Yeah.
But he didn't. I don't think he really, and maybe he did, later on. But
Mhm.
that whole idea of like, people kill people, guns don't kill people. Guns
Well,
are a tool, and the
I
person could use knives. You could
yeah.
build your own bomb. I
Mhm.
mean, if you want to do harm, just whether you use a gun or not, you can do harm.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It was like it almost seemed like he systematically went through each like kind of issue, each major issue, and got it to the point where they were just going around in circles, you know? And so I think that's why he kind of jumped out of the gun debate so quickly, because I mean, it didn't take long for that guy to be like for us to realize like this guy has no fucking clue what he's talking about, you know? And I think when
And
Clint got to that point, he's like, well, the rest of this topic is kind of useless, you know, so
it's
then let's just jump
amazing,
on the
though,
next one.
how many people I know on the left that argue the same points and have the same responses.
Mhm.
So
That's
it's
where the whole
just,
NPC meme came from,
well,
you know?
I mean, we talk about the religion of the woke and the religion of the left, and that's kind of how especially a lot of religious people that I've kind of argued with, um kind of act. It's
Mhm.
like, well, this is just how it is. Especially like Catholicism. I mean, I remember asking like, well, why do you, kneel all these many times? It's, well, that's just how we do it. Or why do you like, the water and the like all of these things? And the response is, well, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
It's like, so you're just a robot following orders, and
There,
you're
there's
never once going to question it?
there's a uh there's an experiment that was done on chimpanzees, and there was a cage, and in the center of the cage was a ladder, and at the top of the ladder was a banana. All right. And so it starts with like 4 or 5 monkeys in there, you know, and one of them will start to climb the ladder to get the banana. Well, when they do that, they would shock the cage so that all the monkeys in there are just, you know. And so then that one climbed off the ladder or fell off the ladder or whatever. And then a second monkey would start to climb up the ladder, go up to get the banana, and everybody gets shocked again, you know. So by the time the third one climbs on the ladder, all the other monkeys just fucking swarm him. Don't get on the ladder, you know, because we're going to get shocked, you know. So then they replace one monkey with a new monkey that doesn't know what's going on. All right. That new monkey goes to climb on the ladder. They shock the cage again. All the other monkeys attack it. All right. Then they replace another monkey. They do this for all 5 monkeys until it's nothing but a cage of new monkeys that have never been shocked before. But they still continue to introduce new chimpanzees who go on the ladder, and all of the new chimps that have never been shocked before swarm him and beat the shit out of him, you know? And so it's a constant cycle where nobody knows why, but that's just how things are done here. And that's what those monkeys would say if they could talk, you know?
Yeah.
that's exactly what happens to the left, because if you and it happened on the right, especially right after 9/11, and all that huge push for nationalism and stuff like that, and
Well, remember the under George Bush Senior, there was that. Wasn't it Quayle who was, the left was making fun of him because he wanted to censor video games and stuff because he was really a proponent of video games cause violence.
yeah,
And yeah, the left was all up in arms about, free speech and censorship, and that wasn't that long ago. And,
yeah.
we've completely flipped to where we're at today.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, so ladies and gentlemen, we are calling all of you Democrats monkeys, and you clearly need to be shocked.
Only the white ones. Let's just be clear. Let's just take a step back from that landmine.
Yeah.
Oh, we're only calling the white ones monkeys.
But it's programmed behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
It's one has to kind of wonder, like, is it intentional programming, or is it that's just how the system works?
I think it's a mix of both. I think because those in power know how the system works, they are able to use that system in order to program people, and so like whenever you're on the left and you start to wander in the territory of, are trans women really women? And then your kids get shocked by the reaction of the people you ask those questions to.
Or you even broach the subject with.
Yeah. And so those are your guardrails, and that happens generation after generation after generation. And now people are defending trans teachers who are teaching children how to give blowjobs. That I pulled that example out of my ass, but like,
I was like, I gotta see this article.
No, there was one where I don't know if the person was trans or some weird non-binary thing or whatever. They were a teacher and brought like sex toys into the class and was teaching kids how to use saliva as lubricant and stuff like that. Just disgusting shit,
Just crazy.
Yeah. And so like or like that shop teacher who's trans and wears these giant foam tits.
Did we ever figure out whether that was just some guy that was trolling, or
no, because there was somebody else who was asking that, like, is this guy like making fun of the left? And no, he is not.
That's crazy. I really thought that was just a giant troll.
Yeah.
Because if it was,
it would have been hilarious if it was.
That's awesome. But wow, that's crazy to have. So yeah, that's just, ugh.
But anyway, you have people defending stuff like that, and that's objectively insane, to anything with sex involving children, to support any aspect of that is objectively insane, And so, like,
unless you work in DC and you're on the Epstein list, that's never been the client list. That's never been. Then it's very normal for
you. In DC, that's a Thursday.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the norm in DC. And I can't remember. Let me see if I can find. Was
the larger point that I was making, and I've heard multiple people start sort of describing it this way, but like the left and a lot of other large groups of people in the United States do not exist on the same plane of reality in their heads, like people like you and me, the reality that we're existing in is that unborn babies are human beings and should have rights. And in their reality, they're not. They're just like parasites,
up until birth, if not after birth.
Yeah. That's I
insane.
cannot think of any reason why that would be socially acceptable. I can't think of any like rational justification for it. And so the only thing it leads me to believe is like maybe this monkey experiment, generation after generation after generation of people not knowing why they're doing a thing, is almost kind of like human evolution, but taking place in society, to where these are just we're almost like two different breeds of human now. Like one that sees inherent value in human life and one that doesn't, you know?
Yeah, it's
Now
definitely those
that was
rod.
some Ian Crossland bullshit.
But it made more sense than what Ian talks about.
That's the
Because
best
you didn't
compliment.
mention China in that rant. It all comes down to the degradation of society
Yeah.
and the rot. The politics is downstream from culture, and our culture is just rot.
Yeah.
It's we basically have been growing narcissists. Each generation has
Mhm.
gotten more and more where they're so used because their parents, allowed, if not enforced, the fact that the world revolved around them.
Mhm.
And so when they become quote unquote adults
Mhm.
they go to college and they're like, you bend to my will. And my will is to say that I am a zim,
Mhm.
or, and if you don't bend, then I'm going to throw a temper tantrum and I want you gone. Because that's what mommy and daddy did for them growing up. Like they removed every barrier. They agreed with everything the kid wanted.
Mhm.
We're growing these kids. I mean, that's parents' fault. And until that's fixed,
Mhm.
yeah, we're fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, granted,
I
I
almost
don't want
see
to
it.
pull.
I almost see it in this kind of goes into national divorce, but I almost kind of see it as like that branch of the human race we need to isolate ourselves from them, and let them destroy themselves, and we can live peacefully in our bubble. I know that using the word bubble like has like bad connotations, like, oh, you exist in an echo chamber or something like that. I'm like, yeah, but my echo chamber's a lot better than the other ones, you know so I
Yeah,
kind of like the idea of surrounding myself with the presence and thoughts of opinions of people who are liberty focused, who want liberty.
right. Well, it'd be fun to have. That's another thing with Clint, and maybe he did get to this, but like to have the discussion with a leftist to go, let's look at New York, let's look at California, let's look at Portland, Oregon, let's look at LA, let's look at San Francisco. Like these are the dens of liberal like paradise, right? I
Yeah.
mean, because they've had full control for years. And how are they doing? How's that working out for you?
Yeah.
So these are programs that you champion constantly, and this is what it does to a society. You have your proof right there. I just like, what would a leftist, how would they come back from that? Do they
Hmm.
honestly think that these cities and these states are amazing? How do you I just like, there's your proof.
Yeah.
And if you I mean, the only thing I could think that they might argue is, well, these programs need to be done at the federal level, because at the state level there's too many Republicans that, I just don't know how you argue to say, you know the liberal ideals are are great. Like,
Hmm.
how do you get behind that and be like, go New York? And like, what's their violent crime spike has been just off the chain.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And
Yeah.
yet we keep on turning out more and more young people that are so bought into these failed policies.
Hmm.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate because it's like it's almost like, man, what fucking chance does this younger generation have? Because like a lot of people like really don't like Gen Z, you know, but Gen Z, I don't know why I have a soft spot for them, but I'm just like, I really hope you guys are great, you
Which
know.
one's Gen Z's? Not, they're not adults yet, right? That's
Right.
the
They're
current like college
they're
slash high
just
school.
getting to drinking age, you know.
what was the generation right before them? Not, I mean,
Millennials.
millennials. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's what I am. I am a
Well,
piece of shit.
and I'm 79, not years old, but date of birth.
What would that make you?
I would
The
look
like the
really
very
good for
very
79.
whatever in Zennial. I think you'd be. Oh no, Zennial is like between millennial and Gen Z.
Yeah,
You'd
I'm
be like an
Gen
Xennial
X,
or whatever. Or you?
but Gen X just is like it ends at 79 and
Oh, it
millennial
does.
starts at 80.
Oh, okay.
So I'm right on that cusp
Yeah.
because I remember distinctly the world before the internet, and then obviously I'm very tech savvy.
Yeah.
So I have a foot in both because I kind of look at like the internet being a huge transition for everyone,
Yeah.
and so like I kind of have a foot in, and you probably do too, like a foot in both worlds.
Yeah. I mean, when the internet hit for me, I was, oh man, I think I was like 8, 7 is when we got dial-up internet. Oh no, I was 9. I was 9 when we got internet. So I do distinctly remember pre-internet, like having to send checks through the mail to buy something you saw in an infomercial and stuff like that. Like I remember stuff like that. I remember like pre-Amazon, you know.
Yeah. So I think I was about 16, 15 or 16 when we got AOL.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like being able to hack passwords and logins to be able to get AOL for free.
Yeah.
or like getting on the other line when my brother was on the computer and like yelling into that dial because it would screw up the
the internet
connection and it would boot the other person off. Those were the good old days.
Oh man. It's crazy because like kids today don't understand the concept of like phone lines and like how those worked, where like you would be upstairs on the phone with somebody and like your mom would pick up the other line and be like, you gotta get off, I gotta call Stacy or whatever. I don't know why I gave my own mother, who's from Oklahoma, an East Coast accent. None of those people exist.
Yeah, you had to be really rich if you had multiple phone lines.
Well, if you had multiple phone line, well, okay, we were in a house that had multiple outputs or multiple phone plugins. So like, yeah, the one in our kitchen was a rotary phone. So I knew how to use a rotary phone when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Nobody else did.
Yeah, that's very, I mean, it took about 15 minutes to call somebody, and God forbid you not hit the wrong number, dialed the wrong, and then you have to like hang up and start all over again.
Yeah. Man, I remember, it's so crazy. That's some weird nostalgia that we just stumbled upon. But man, all right.
Speaking of weird, Kanye West.
28 minutes in, we're finally getting to the point.
Let's transition over to weird.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so
weirder than a dial phone. Rotary dial phone.
So like for those of you who have been living under a rock for the last 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, Kanye West was on Timcast and he was there with Milo Yiannopoulos and Nick Fuentes.
See, I don't even know who Nick Fuentes is. So it was interesting, like, to kind of go down a little bit of a rabbit hole just to figure out, like, who
he's
these
been
guys
on
are.
Part of the Problem a couple times.
Okay, I think I heard Dave mention that.
Stupidly young. Like,
yeah.
Like he's like 22 or some shit like that. It's ridiculous. He's so young.
Is he like an outright anti-Semite, or is he like an outright like I'm a Nazi?
No, he's not a Nazi. He is an outright like anti-Semite though. Like he like him and his followers called Dave Smith one of the few good Jews.
Well, so this is kind of my take. So I'm a big I can't stand the Zionist section of Judaism. So I look at that as being that's kind of like a a sect of Judaism that is something that as a, like you have to buy into. So, I don't, again, I don't think Kanye has really done his homework because, to paint an entire religion and everybody who's born that way. And well, here's another, like, as the people who did him wrong or did him dirty. Um, so yeah, I don't think he's done a deep enough dive. My question to you is, as far as like, because there's seems to be kind of a like a back and forth. Do you remember when Oprah kind of got in trouble because she was like, Judaism isn't a race,
Oh, that was
and they
Whoopi
were like,
Goldberg.
oh, Whoopi. Who
Yeah,
did I say?
you said Oprah.
Oprah. She
I
probably
know
thinks,
they
well,
look like they're all related, dude, but come on, Jesus.
that's funny because I was just watching a meme of Oprah and Tom Cruise when he jumped on the couch.
Yeah.
So that's probably why I had Oprah on the brain. Um, but yeah, Whoopi was talking about how it's a religion. It's not a, it's not
It's not a
a
race.
race.
Yeah.
And then the pushback is, well, because Hitler thought they were erased and he was racist, then they have to be what is your take on, like, are Jews a race or is it a religion?
Okay, so so like my views on race whenever I was like a kid, like really young, I split everybody into two groups. There were white people and there were black people, because that's how my juvenile brain understood that and made that distinction is, oh, there's white people and there's black people, you
So
know?
in that case, like people from India would be black.
No,
Be-
no, it was very weird. But like people from India I considered white.
they're
I
they're
considered
hybrids.
I considered no, like I didn't even think that. I was just like, oh, those are white people from India. I thought that about Asian people and like Hispanic people and like Middle Eastern people. I was like, these are all white people. It's just white people come in different shades, And I was like, and then there's like black people, and like anybody listening, please understand this was my understanding of the difference in race when I was like 6, you know? But like I remember that's how I thought about it. And so then as I got older, that was still just kind of clanging around in the back of my head, but as I got older and started to understand the nuance of all these different races and all these different people from different parts of the world, like it's still like deep down inside, like kind of made that same split. And so like whenever people started talking about racism against Jews, I thought that was really strange because I was like, they're just white guys, you know, they're just white guys with glasses. And
Dark hair.
yeah. And so it never made sense to me, like like during World War II, the Holocaust, and like just like legit anti-Semitism. I was just like, it's just weird, I understood that it was bad, but at the same time it was just weird, you know it didn't make sense. Like I was like, if you're hating people based off of race, that dude looks just like you, he just has
Right.
different colored hair. I know there's a difference between like Ashkenazi Jews and I don't remember the other like racial difference in Judaism, but there's Ashkenazi Jews, and then there's the ones that are like legit from the Middle East and dark skin, and and they're Jewish. But anyway, so yeah, it just never made sense to me. I always thought it was weird, but like, I've never considered Jew to be a isolated race all themselves. I've always thought of it as like a
Do you
religion.
do you think that the whole race thing is kind of like pushed by the Jewish community because that's like a like a better victim class than religion?
I don't know. I mean, I could see some circles doing that to try to use it to their advantage, but like
Be-
as a whole, I don't know.
because
You know.
even look at like Kanye. Let's say he was ranting on Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
do you think it would be such a big deal if he was going after Catholicism?
No, it wouldn't have been, and the left would have praised him for it.
So that's what I've kind of thought about, is wondering, like, how much of this push for Jews to be a race versus a religion, how much is the race card being pushed because it gives you a higher level of being able to claim, victimhood.
Right. I don't
Because
know.
if it's just a religion, then it's a lot harder to shut somebody down if
Mhm.
they're going after your religion.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a Jewish guy that I know in the Mises Caucus, and he's originally from Ukraine, and uh, I was talking to him, and he's on TikTok, Konstantin Davinsky, Konstantin with a K. You should look him up. He's a great guy.
Is he the one who taught you Nostrovia?
Yeah, he's on TikTok as Konstantin Davinsky. So everybody needs to go look him up. He's a great.
That first name, anybody with the name Constantine,
is
that's
fucking
just
badass. He was
awesome.
he was my like hotel roommate whenever I went to Reno, and me and him met on TikTok and stayed in the same hotel room a few months later.
We need to have this guy on. This would be a great conversation with
Yeah, we do. Yeah, exactly. And like I'd love to have him on to talk about like Zionism, because I've asked him about it, and he's like, well, there is a lot of nuance that's involved there. And I was like, well, dude, you need to be on the show. So anyway, yeah, I'll get that set up. Anyway, totally different topic.
So we'll be talking about Jews in further episodes.
Yes.
The Jews, which is what Dave Chappelle says never ever say.
Oh, man, you're gonna ruin our chances in Hollywood.
We will be talking about
and Jews.
The Jews. And when Dave Chappelle says it, it almost sounds like he's talking about the juice, but it's the Jews.
Like O.J. Simpson.
Yeah,
that's juice. The other thing you're not allowed to say in Hollywood is O.J. Simpson. The and juice.
The juice.
Anyway, so I was talking to Constantine, or no, I'm sorry, he did a TikTok video, and he mentioned, he was like, Jews hadn't been considered white people until like 20 years ago. And so, but I mean, that's, right when I would have been able to start paying attention to stuff like that was 20 years ago, and so maybe because of the timing, maybe before then they weren't considered white people. I just don't know.
Which is, like, if you look at a Jewish person who is, affiliate, self-described Jewish,
mm-hmm.
and you look at a Palestinian,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe there's some subtle differences, but because that's the region they're from,
yeah,
there's a lot of similarities physically. And I always look at race as a physical, like an obvious physical difference between somebody.
Yeah.
And where religion is a belief, therefore it's different than race. And
it's got to be race, because Ari Shafir considers himself Jewish and he's an atheist.
Right. And that's the thing is, like, if you want to talk about like Zionists, Jews, they are all about being pure, quote unquote, purebred in
mm-hmm.
Judaism. So like they they only intermarry with other Jews.
Yeah.
And I just don't see it as a race,
mm-hmm.
because of the skin color, and because it's much clearer that it's a religion, right? Because they all, especially, actively.
I think if you have multiple races inside of a race, it's a religion.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because
you have Ashkenazi Jews, and then you have like the hardcore brown skin Middle Eastern Jews. Like, that's not a race, that's a religion.
right, because I could join the Jewish
You
church,
could Jew
right?
up. Is that what you're gonna
And I
say?
could Jew up if I joined the church. I could so
Ben
in
Ben
like in
DeYoung, mega Jew.
yeah,
You're like the Voltron of Jews, where you take like Larry David and all these and
I would need to put, like, inject some Jew into my arm. Like it would need to be something I could put into my vein if I would be able to be Jewish. But like, um, it's possible to join the Jewish faith and to
Mhm.
be consider yourself a Jew, and others would also call you a Jew because you
But
joined the
would you be
church.
accepted fully by other Jews? Like if somebody just converts
Yeah.
to Judaism, you know?
Is that enough? And that's I think that's the difference between a Zionist Jew
Mhm.
and a non-Zionist Jew.
So like a Zionist Jew would not consider them Jewish.
Right, because they
Okay.
don't
Because
because they
they're not racially Jewish.
right. Zionists are they literally believe that they are the chosen one from God, and therefore because of that, that gives them kind of like they're better
Yeah.
than everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I can't stand about Zionism is this, like, you all everyone else is going to hell, I'm going to heaven, and you know, Jewish priorities always come first. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the whole like Ben Shapiro side of things. Like he may
Well, like,
rail against like wokeism and all that stuff, but if that was coming out of Israel, he would be championing it.
yeah. Well, okay, so like, and like, I'm tying this back to Kanye, but like the distinction that you're making, whenever Kanye was on Timcast and when he was on Alex Jones, he wasn't talking with that kind of distinction. So
Right.
like, this is my big takeaway from Kanye being on Timcast, from him being on Alex Jones, and how freedom of speech ties into all this, is like, we really need free speech, because the backlash on his two appearances has been so bad for him that he has zero chance of winning the presidency. And because he was talking about Jews without the kind of distinction that you're making, like I watched that and I was like, thank God that this happened, because if Kanye West had gotten elected president, I think we actually would have seen some really scary shit.
Do you think that that's like because he played with that last time around of
Mm-hmm.
running for president? I don't know if he fully registered, but again, I don't. He's been in such a like Hollywood bubble for so long
Yeah.
that I don't think he realized what does it actually mean to run for president,
Yeah.
and what are the requirements to even file to be a candidate.
What do real people actually need, which is liberty, versus like he has no concept of regular people because he's had handlers since he was a kid,
Well, it
you know?
reminds me of like Michael Scott, like I declare bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Like you can't Cayenne, Kanye, you can just go on like TV shows and be like, I'm running for president. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. Yeah. Like he doesn't understand the complexity of like running a presidential campaign and like having to meet with people and having to try to find, like, it's impossible for him to relate to like a regular person. He hasn't been a regular person since he was like 19. You know what I mean? And so it's like, or however old he was whenever College Dropout came out. But it was like it's like it, he just doesn't understand.
He's very out of touch. And you
Yeah.
can't just say I'm running for president and then vote for me and then jump on your private jet and fly away. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, there's a lot, especially on the paperwork side and like getting on the ballot. And I mean, there's a lot of work you've got to do. And I don't think he even understands it. Or maybe that's the thing is like, how much of this is just a narcissist looking for attention?
Mm-hmm. Looking for
Or
attention, but also trying to find a group of people to put all of his misery on, you know? And it's like,
blame.
trying to find a group of people to blame, you know, and that is exactly what happened with Hitler, you know. Germany was fucking destitute after World War One. They owed everybody all this money. Their economy was in shambles, and some guy opened his big fat tiny mustached mouth and said, "Guess what, guys? You know why we're all suffering so bad? It's because of the Jews." You know?
Well, and probably very similar to a lot of times in history is there is a very tie-in between the banking system and Judaism. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's Jews and banks and money have been tied together for a very long time.
Yeah.
And again, very similar to Kanye, it's like just because the bank that you run out of is operated and owned by Jews doesn't paint the entire Jewish religion or as negative. And I think it's funny. The Have you seen that Bill Burr sketch when he's talking about like thank God Kanye wasn't born white because he sounds just like Hitler.
No, I haven't heard that bit.
Oh man, it's brilliant.
I
If
need to check it
anybody
out.
it's so funny because it's so true. And it's becoming really big now because of this was 3 specials ago, I think, if not 4,
Holy
that Bill Burr
crap.
talked about it. Like
Wow.
it's like almost 10 years old, where he's like Kanye's like narcissism, like
Well, yeah, he jumped right on the Trump train, didn't he?
Kanye did
Yeah,
pretty
like early
quickly.
on.
And it's just there are a lot of things that Kanye has to say that I think are valid.
Mm-hmm.
Even his initial um like why are all of these self-proclaimed Jews in all of these institutions of power, especially when it comes to Hollywood? Like, that critique is fair.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start being like, well, Hitler did some good things, he built the
Yeah, that's when
roads
you've gone
and
off the
he
rails.
invented the microphone, and like,
Yeah.
you got to love everyone, like, then all of a sudden any good points he had to make,
Mm-hmm.
which are you have to throw 'em everything out the window
Yeah, you have to throw
when
out the
you
baby
go
with the
that far.
bathwater there. And like, so like, so here's something that I've been thinking about a lot since then.
Speaking of Nazis, I just got to clarify. So there is a swastika behind me. That is the book called The Third Reich, and it's a great book on like the rise and fall of the Third Reich. Actually, I think that's actually the subtitles of the book.
It's a history book, folks.
Right. And it is like it's fascinating, like
Mm-hmm.
studying Nazism, studying the rise of fascism, and studying the rise of communism.
I'm gonna
Um
I'm gonna try to okay, so you see the swastika on that book, but if you look up just ever so much to the right, you see the Guy Fawkes mask, which if you know anything about political ideologies, you should know that the Guy Fawkes mask completely cancels out the
the
swastika.
history book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so it's
blowing up
like, oh,
parliament.
this guy's a Nazi. No, this guy's a fucking anarchist. He hates the Nazis.
Yeah, it's like they're a fascinating case study,
Mm-hmm.
and just like, communism is, just like fascism is, to be able to see like how did like a civilization or a country get to that point where they're willing to adopt ideologies
Right.
that maybe they don't agree with,
Mm-hmm.
but they look at it as a means to an end.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Germans, if not the majority of Germans, looked at the propaganda against the Jews as, you know what, I'm not I know some Jewish people, and I have no problem with them, but you know what? Hitler really turned around the economy. He's building us back into a world power.
Yeah.
Um, and the one good thing I have to say about Nazism, no, just kidding. But
Snappy
it,
dressers.
yeah, snappy dress shows. Thank you, Hugo Boss. Um, but they did turn Germany around amazingly fast,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they went from a third world country where their barrel of Deutschmarks couldn't buy a loaf of bread to a world power in less than 10 years.
Yeah.
And that shows you the power of fascism
Mm-hmm.
in the short term,
In the
right?
short term, yeah, but it's not sustainable long
Not
term.
sustainable.
Yeah.
And it's fun to kind of look at countries today, because I honestly believe almost every country in the world right now are fascist.
Mm-hmm.
They're just in a different degree of fascism,
They're
because
they're
fascism,
fascist countries that like tell people that they're not fascist.
well, like for example, we in the United States, the only thing that differentiates us from a fascist, excuse me, from fascist Germany is the fact we have two parties instead of one.
Yeah.
That's literally the only thing that differentiates
Mm-hmm.
us,
But
politically speaking. Not
the
I
two
not
parties just take control over the fascism machine every 4 years. That's the
right.
only difference.
Well, and I think a lot of times, when we talk about like Antifa and stuff like that, like fascism isn't racist.
Mm-hmm.
Fascism, a lot of times people just look at fascism and think Nazism, and they're very different.
Yeah.
Fascism is a form of government. Nazism is an ideology.
Yeah.
And people need to understand that fascism is the predominant form of government, because a lot of governments looked at what fascism did in Germany specifically and were like, I want that,
Yeah.
right? Because this collusion of state power and big business and corporatism, and like, that's awesome. Like, we just have to like make a couple too big to fail corporations.
Yeah.
But even funny enough, like even in Nazi Germany or fascist Germany, like Hitler and the regime were very prudent when they wanted a new plane developed
Mm-hmm.
or a new missile. They put out bids.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting to like to learn about all of like the different companies that actually had to provide, like, here's our proof of concept for what you want, and here's our proof, and then the German government would pick the best of those companies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more capitalistic than we have today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we want a bomber, we're going to go to Lockheed Martin.
Yeah.
Like, there is no review of multiple concepts in the United States.
Yeah.
Lockheed Martin owns everything when it comes to A, B, C, and D, and they build it.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to fund it and they're going to build it. So, like, we have almost perfected fascism.
Yeah.
If that, like, that isn't that crazy to think, like, at least in Nazi Germany, the corporation and government, there was a vetting process. We've thrown the vetting process away. That's why I think, they talk about like toilet seats at the White House.
Yeah.
You go to Home Depot, it's $25 and they're spending $5,000 on a toilet seat.
Yeah.
Well, because they're going with the guy that they know who are making these toilet seats, they're selling them to Home Depot for 25 and they're selling from the US government for 5,000.
Yeah.
Like, Hitler would have never done anything like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they would force companies to compete. I mean, it was still a collusion, but there was some competition. We've eliminated that competition. So we're kind of like fascism on steroids. Just because we have two choices to vote for instead of one,
Yeah.
we call ourselves a democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
Wow.
So Kanye West
All right.
is a Nazi.
So I'm very glad that he had the two appearances that he had. I think they were very telling, and I think because Twitter is a free speech zone now, a lot of people were able to see that, and a lot of people were able to go, fuck no, that dude's crazy, and that was a bitch move, him walking out on Timcast. That was a real bitch move.
Saying nothing.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if that was like almost like a temper tantrum. Like,
yes, that's what it was.
You
it was
push
a fucking
back
temper
on
tantrum.
me, and you're not big enough to push back on me.
Yeah.
So I'm walking out.
Yeah. But like, Tim Pool has said some really embarrassing things and made some really embarrassing points at points in time, but I got to hand it to him. he fucking stuck to his fucking guns when the biggest rapper to ever live is in his studio. You know, I was glad to see that. Anyway, okay, so the bigger point that I think that Kanye is a symptom of is I've been thinking about this a lot over the past few days. I think that was a symptom of something that's growing in Black communities in the United States, and I think that they are looking around and being like, why do we live in the ghettos? Why do we have, why are Black communities the way that they are, and I think there is I think the like Black Israelites were the first ones to start doing it, to start being like, we need a group of people to blame, and I think they're missing the mark. I think very few of them actually hit the mark on the head. People like Maj Touré, or I mean, even Larry Elder and his Uncle Tom documentary is brilliant, but he misses the mark too, because he places the blame solely on the Democrats, and Kanye is starting to place the blame on the Jews. But what they need to understand is that neither one of those are the sole group that's responsible for what's been done to the Black American family, and like they keep pushing this ideology down your throat that like, oh, it's because of slavery. It's all because of slavery. It's not because of slavery, because guess what? You guys bounced back from slavery, from having absolutely nothing in this country. You guys bounced back, and you guys had your own economies. You guys had your own fucking Wall Street. You had all this stuff. You were a burgeoning society in the United States with your own millionaires, or the equivalent of your own culture, and like you guys were thriving. All right, even after slavery, even after the rejection of getting your 40 acres and a mule, even with no reparations, you guys were.
And then here comes the government.
Here comes the government, and I want to say it was in the late 50s, early 60s, or maybe even late 60s into the 70s. But
70s.
The Democratic Party, and you got to understand what I'm saying here, the Democratic Party is just another wing of the same fucking bird. All right, they're just the side of the machine that did it first. Because if it wasn't the Democrats,
side, they're the left side of the bird.
Yeah, and so like if the Democrats didn't do it, then the Republicans would have. But one of these parties would have stepped down and been like, "Hey, we need to get these Black communities on welfare," and they do that, and they disincentivize fatherhood in the Black communities. And they say, oh, you're a single Black mother? Oh, well, we'll take care of you. We will pay your bills. We'll help raise your children. All right. And so there's no need for a Black father. And you have.
Or just a father in general.
There's no need for a father. The state will be your father. All right. And you'll grow up and you'll have all your needs taken care of. And that fucking destroys Black families. It takes fathers out of homes. Fathers are so fucking important for raising kids.
Well, and now we're seeing that en masse in every community. Whether it's, I think the Black community, I wouldn't say bought into that lie.
They were tricked.
They were the first people who were tricked into that lie. But
yeah.
Then like you look at whether it's poor white or poor Black,
mm-hmm.
they're typically a single mother, multiple kids from multiple fathers,
mm-hmm.
who are just, using the system to provide for their bills.
But talk to Black people who about voting Republican. Just talk to them about it and listen to their reactions. Oh no, I can't do that. Like people are terrified of voting for a different party than the Democrats because it's been ingrained and they've been brainwashed, and generation after generation after generation, they are forced to think that Democrat equals good. And because of that, they're always dangling a carrot on the end of a stick. Oh, if you vote for me, we're going to fix your neighborhoods. We're going to fund your schools. We're going to do all this stuff. And they never fucking do. It's just a carrot hanging at the end of a stick. you know.
Well,
And that,
at the same time, I don't think the Republicans do themselves any favor. So,
no,
for example,
that's what I'm saying. It's like the Democrats were just the ones that do it first, you know. But what you have to realize is that it doesn't matter which party did it first. That party would have been dangling a carrot at the end of that stick, the ones who promise you welfare, because they have guaranteed themselves a permanent voting block.
well, don't you think it's almost like the African American, the black community was kind of a trial for that idea of
Mm-hmm.
buying votes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think a lot of times, a lot like Republicans, I mean, they both like placate
Mm-hmm.
to their base of voters
Yeah.
and people who are sponsors, but kind of coming back to the fact that Republicans don't do themselves any justice on this. So, for example, as a photographer, I shot occasionally for some GOP events.
Mm-hmm.
All right, there was a big GOP event on Mackinac Island,
Mm-hmm.
and at the
Dude, that
Grand
must have been
Hotel,
fun.
um, there was two black people there.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was brought in because I don't know if it was Whitmer. I think Whitmer made it harder for this person's hot dog stand to be able to function in Lansing, and so they kind of stood up against Whitmer. But anyhow, they were literally there to say a prayer before dinner,
Mm-hmm.
and they were clearly the token black people.
Yeah.
It was a husband and wife.
Yep.
Everyone else was white.
Yep.
And
that's
I remember just like, holy crap. Like,
mm-hmm.
if everybody could see that the white people are parading this black person out
Mm-hmm.
to give a prayer
Yeah.
because they were persecuted by a Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is bullshit.
Yeah. And like people like that need to understand, like, okay, you have all your arguments against the Democrats for slavery and for the KKK and stuff like that. You have all those arguments and you like to use those arguments, and that's fine. Yeah, the Democrats back then were also pieces of shit just like they are now. But what about the Lily White movement that happened in the Republican Party? Okay, where they expelled all the black congressmen or basically all the black party members. They kicked them out of the party so that they could appease white Southerners. Like, both of these parties have horrific pasts like that, you know? And
yeah, their track record on how they look and view and treat anyone of another race.
yeah, and that's why whenever people like Matt Walsh, like I like Matt Walsh a lot better than a lot of the other Daily Wire guys, but like whenever Matt Walsh or fucking Mike What's His Nuts or Ben Shapiro or any of those fucking Daily Wire guys go like, oh, well, the Democrats, you know, the founders of the KKK. And I'm like, shut the fuck up, dude. Like, the Republicans are so bad about that shit too. You know, fucking
Well,
the Green Party would have been bad about that shit back then too.
Did you see, I think when Matt Walsh was on with Joe Rogan, they had a little bit of a discussion on gay
people,
marriage. Yeah. And Matt Walsh was like like, I was just like, oh, all right. So you're old school Republican.
Yeah. Yeah. And well,
I want to impose my values on everyone else.
Yes. I want to force my
and right.
Yeah. I want to force my morality on you. Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely right. That's what bugs me. Okay. I have multiple gay family members. All right. And so like, and this is one of the things that kind of brought me out of religion too. But I was like, I care a whole hell of a lot about the gay family members I do have, you know, and especially like I live with a gay person, you know, my wife's gay uncle lives with us, you know, living with a gay person versus just seeing him out on the street or something like that, or at the grocery store. Like, it's totally different. You get an idea of who they are as actual people, you know,
right.
And so like whenever, who's his name? He's the guy that does Freedom Tunes. He's good on a lot of stuff, but man, whenever it comes to gay marriage, he fucking sucks because he's Catholic and he cannot divorce his religion from his politics. And that's what drives me insane about conservatives is like, okay, I understand you have these
that's like Ben Shapiro.
Yeah. And that's what I can't stand about conservatives, because I'm like
Prager. PragerU.
Prager's awful. He
Horrible.
is awful about it.
He's like Prager and Shapiro. They're both like Zionists.
Yeah. And especially when it comes to gay marriage, because the LGBT community, I'm gonna say that woke nonsense language, but
hey,
like,
you didn't use the I and the plus and the
to me there's 4 letters and not a goddamn one more. so like the gay community, I'll just say that, like, I have a soft spot for the gay community. They played a huge role in like me sort of coming up as an adult, and I've always had like a soft spot for him. And so it was like whenever they go on about the definition of marriage, they're like, marriage is a religious thing. I was like, no the fuck it's not. Like, it is. Marriage is just the first one to fuck, or religion is just the first thing that fucking planted its flag in something that was already happening. Like, you see monogamous relationships in all kinds of animals all over the world. You see it in fucking, maybe not dolphins. I think dolphins are whores, but like, you see it in penguin.
That is going to be the title of our
Dolphins
episode.
Are whores.
Dolphins are whores.
So,
and I'm putting that on a t-shirt for subscribers. Nazi whores. Dolphins are Nazi
Dolphins
whores.
are Nazi whores. So, okay. So we need a t-shirt with a dolphin wearing black and red lingerie with a Nazi armband.
Yeah.
And we out with one of its fins. Anyway, there's animals all over the world that are monogamous, and humans are too. All right. And like,
well, what do you think about kind of the push that is kind of the anti-monogamous push? Because it's amazing how many more open marriage like discussions and people that I know that are in those type of relationships like that it's becoming a bigger deal.
I think it is a trend. I think it's a hiccup, but I think people are naturally just going to go back to being monogamous. I think it's something that a dude out there who wanted to fuck multiple women and not feel guilty started. And like, I those people are lying to themselves. Human beings are not wired, and especially children, because there's a lot of kids being raised in these polyamorous homes. Children are not wired to have 3 parents, 4 parents, 5 parents. They need a strong role model and a nurturing role model. They don't need 7 of them.
A discussion about the reduction of testosterone in males, right?
Yeah.
And
in these polyamorous relationships, a lot of like the primary person of the relationship is almost always a girl.
Yep. 90 yeah, I would say almost all of it.
It's one like, girl with multiple men.
It's weird because there's been such a gender swap. I mean, we have males who are destroying females in women's sports because, claiming that they're a woman. And there are women in marriages who are literally running trains on their husbands with multiple partners. And the husband is just like, whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
And it's so weird.
I think that's a symptom of like mental illness in the country. Like, I mean, okay, a lot of these, especially athletes, like these men who transition into women and they're playing sports against other women and beating the shit out of them, whether it's UFC or fucking what's his nuts that was a swimmer, all this stuff. I think this is, testosterone levels in men are so low, but men need to, they have a need to feel like they're achieving something. They have like, men are goal oriented. They have a need to feel like they're achieving something, that they're working towards something. And these men are so pathetic and weak that they have to transition to women in order to do that, in order to fulfill that. You know what I mean? Like this Dylan Mulvaney guy, fuck, you can tell he just fucking hates women because I'm just wondering, in some cases, are they just abusing the system because they know they can get away with it, or are they bought? Yeah.
are they bought into that system,
Mm-hmm.
and they really do quote unquote identify as a female,
Yeah.
or
I it, I
are
I
they like, oh, I'm just going to take advantage of this so I can get a gold medal?
I think most of the time it's the latter. You know, I think, and when I say most of the time, I mean like in the upper 90th percentile, it's the latter. But I think there are a few cases where somebody, and like, you know, if you're trans and listening to this, I highly doubt it. But hey, if you are, fucking welcome, love you guys.
And we'd
But
love to have your input.
yeah, but like, if you're, I think there are a few cases out there where it's legit, where like the brain chemistry is so weird and fucked up or whatever, or something weird happened
Like
in utero.
gender dysphoria,
Yeah, like legit.
actual medical condition.
Yeah, like legit gender dysphoria. I think you're going through something, and sometimes doctors have been like, the safest thing for you is to transition. You know, I think that does happen, but I think it's so crazy rare. I don't think it's what 3% or 1.3% of the population, which the numbers are saying. I think it's like 0.01% of the population are actually like that. And maybe even that's too generous. But like people like Blair White, people like I don't remember the name of the actress on Orange is the New Black. I think there are some cases where it's like, no, that if you get really deep down into the chemistry or whatever, this person was supposed to develop as a female but got all the male parts, you know?
Right. But it's more, again, it's more of a mental condition
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of narcissistic, woke young people are trying to say, no, this is reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have a lot of, they're in echo chambers in college,
mm-hmm.
and and people like bow to them,
Yeah.
and not only support them, but then, like, again, they try to make laws to
Mm-hmm.
persecute anyone who says differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's yeah, it's interesting, because I remember again in the 90s, like the whole gay thing was, we're born this way, right? This is not a choice, this is genetic.
Yeah.
And where's the pushback now where everyone says this is a choice?
Mm-hmm.
It is genetic. Like, it's such a complete opposite marketing.
It's
You would
those
think
guardrails, man.
you
It's
would
those
think
guardrails. When you put
you're right.
so many guardrails up over every fucking topic, it's like all of this, like after a while, nothing makes any sense.
Because if you can choose your gender or choose your sexuality, then that like kills the whole I'm gay from birth and it's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It totally eliminates that argument, which was the foundational argument
Yeah.
of gay rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's again, the I think kind of like the, at least my viewpoint on culture, especially today, is hypocrisy,
Mm-hmm.
is socially acceptable, if not lauded
Mm-hmm.
and applauded.
Yeah.
Like, you could believe that you were born gay 5 years ago, and then now you're championing choosing your own gender,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody sees the disconnect or is willing to call out that disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been interesting. So Dave Rubin, I don't know if you watch him or listen to him very often,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I catch a lot of his episodes.
I was a big fan of Dave Rubin when he first started the Rubin Report, and it was very like, I've woken up from being on the left.
Yeah.
And one of his PragerU videos really caught fire, and he really kind of ascended.
Mm-hmm.
But during the Trump years, he was baited and almost used by so many Republicans.
Yeah.
And he now identifies, I mean, he will say he's Republican with libertarian leanings, but the
Mm-hmm.
leanings on libertarianism is becoming more and more, he's just right wing.
Yeah.
And his rants are right wing, they're all anti, and part of it, was when he joined the Blaze, but you can tell he went from one echo chamber at Young Turks
To another one.
to another one at the Blaze.
Yeah.
And it's just made me lose so much respect for him because like he met Donald Trump, and now that he has I can't remember Donald Trump's oldest son who's also big into politics. I can't remember his name, but he has his cell phone number that he's kind of talked about. Like he's 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 being used by the right. And that's my problem with so many leftists who have joined the right
Mm-hmm.
is just because I totally blame the left, because I guarantee you with Dave Rubin, if he had equal time on CNN and on Fox,
Mm-hmm.
he would see the evils in both and come to a much more logical conclusion.
Yeah.
But he was totally, as soon as he turned on the left, he was eliminated and ostracized on the left. And then he was welcomed with open arms on the right.
Yeah.
And like Charlie Kirk, I can't stand that douchebag.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's a water carrying Republican.
Yep.
And whatever Republican Party decides is like newsworthy, he is all about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it sometimes, even when it comes to Rand Paul and Thomas Massey, you know, they will vote a lot of times against what I know that they believe,
Yeah.
but because it is in support of their constituents. And I'm sure that's how they do the mental gymnastics to say, I'll vote yes on this
Mm-hmm.
because I'm representing my constituents.
Yeah.
Like they are Republican and they want a war in Ukraine, or they want whatever the Republican Party is voting all yes.
Thomas Massey vote yes on aid to Ukraine?
I don't think he did on that.
Because I thought he was one of the only people who was like, maybe we should be questioning this.
There were many times during the Trump presidency that he went, I support Donald Trump, even like days after Donald Trump called him like yellow belly coward, or he would go on his rants because Massey would demand a vote on a spending bill.
Mm-hmm.
And Massey was like, we need to vote on this and in person.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump was like, how dare you hold this bill up? But then 2 weeks later, Massey would be like, Donald Trump was one of the greatest presidents. But it's like, I know he doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
He's just representing his constituents.
Right.
And I'm sure that's how he makes it okay in his head,
mm-hmm.
because he's a representative. But like, the fact that you have to sell your soul, you definitely have to give Justin a lot of credit, Justin Amash, for getting to the point where he was sick and tired of it. Unfortunately, I think with Justin, if Donald Trump hadn't been elected and maybe it would have been a different Republican,
right,
Justin would still be a Republican.
Yeah.
It was because him and Donald went too many times kind of blow to blow on social media.
Yeah.
And he was so sick and tired of Trump being a hater that he was like, fuck the Republicans. I'm going to the Libertarian Party because I hate Donald Trump so much.
Right.
I view Justin as somebody who is a libertarian light,
mm-hmm.
where I think he really likes the government.
Yeah.
He just wants to try to take over the government from a libertarian perspective to impose more of a libertarian will on the government.
Right.
But that's no difference than the Republicans and the Democrats, right? Because
mm-hmm.
it's just a giant fight over the ring of power. No one is saying we should destroy it. And because I don't think Justin, in fact, I know Justin, because he did talk about this at one of the last Libertarian conventions in Michigan. He talked about the fact that there's a big especially the Mises wing of the Libertarian Party, that would be like, if we had a button to burn down the federal government, we would push it, and he wouldn't.
Yeah.
And that's where this whole thing comes, I think, to a head when it comes to political parties. Is I just want my political party to have the power to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
There's never a discussion about why should they even have that power in the first place.
All right, I've got a question, and maybe we should make this the closing thing, because we've been going for hour 20, dude.
Yeah, I just looked up and I saw an hour, and I was like, that was like, clearly we have not talked in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I know. We just word vomited all over each other. All right, so I have a question. So, and this is kind of, this has more to do with you than what we were previously talking about, but it just hit me.
I was
All right.
waiting for a Michael Malice. What was your favorite part of this episode?
Well, I didn't ask that because I already know what it was. It was looking at me, right?
And the Nazi Dolphins. I mean, that's hand in hand.
Dolphins are Nazi whores. All right, so you have told me in the past that that you're, I think the right word is like an accelerationist. Yeah. To where you're like, you know what, the country is going to collapse, and it's like ripping off a Band-Aid. We need to rip that Band-Aid off. Let's make it collapse faster, because then it won't be as bad. The aftermath won't be as bad. All right. Okay. But you're also a member of the Mises Caucus in the Libertarian Party, you know, and you like you're pushing that message, you know?
And I am recently appointed vice chair of the Libertarian Party of West Michigan.
Oh yeah. So congratulations, dude.
Thank you. Hold the applause. But yeah. All right.
Okay. So you're doing all these pro-liberty, like you're taking action, you know, like you are pushing liberty, you know, but why go through the work of trying to recruit people, trying to get people to vote a certain way, if your ultimate goal is to cause it to collapse sooner?
So
I mean, shouldn't you be canvassing for like Hillary Clinton? Do you know like do you know what I'm saying?
To some extent. So Angela McArdle was on a recent Reason magazine interview, and she talked about running a presidential campaign not because the Libertarian Party can win, but using it as a platform for messaging. And I remember, and I can't remember who it was on the Reason podcast or roundtable that was really like offended by that, right? Like, why run a candidate if you're not running them to win?
Right.
And Angela was like, I'm trying to be realistic. It's just not going to happen. So how can we educate? How can we push a message and use that platform for messaging?
So
not
really
necessarily
this whole party is being used as a message board.
Well, and ironically enough, I had a discussion with Mary Bazuma recently, and one of the things that she talked about was so many times in the events that she attended that were like governor race events, she was more drilled on what is a libertarian than she was on any like platforms. Like they weren't asking her about her campaign, or they were asking her like, what is the libertarian? And in her mind, she was like really frustrated, like, because if you don't even know what the party is or who the party is, like, how do you take a party candidate serious?
Right.
And, you know, I tried to kind of push back and say, even though you didn't win as, you know, the governor race, like, look at how many people did you educate on what a libertarian is. Like, don't look at that as a downside or like, you know, a losing cause. Like, how many people did you get to like look and they, in a whether it's a state fair or a state convention or heck, even a parade, and people are like, libertarian, what's that? And they go to Google and they start looking up libertarian. That is more important in my view than winning elections.
Yeah.
Because at the root of the American problem we have today is culture. Our culture is rotten.
Yeah.
And as libertarians, our main focus should be education, not winning positions.
Hmm.
And so that's where I really differ with Justin Amash.
Yeah.
And I think I really appreciate him having that initial discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a political party should be about winning elections.
Mm-hmm.
And that really made me think, like, is that the main focus of a political party? And should that be the main focus of the Libertarian Party,
Mm-hmm.
is winning elections?
Mm-hmm.
I originally was like, I totally agree with Justin. I have, I think, almost done a 180 on that,
Mm-hmm.
where because I am in such staunch support of national divorce, that I think the Libertarian Party should be primary
Mm-hmm.
about educating and pushing a message of liberty.
Right.
Because if we can move hearts and minds to our message, then post-divorce, we have a lot more influence over how these subsections of governments are constructed.
And you know what? After it happens that first time, like, the precedence has been set, you know? So like there can be like balkanization. You now can you now have set the precedent for a country splitting, you know? And now every time that happens, it'll be easier, to where eventually we will have our own little Ancapistans, you know?
Well, and that's where, this has been on the ballot in Texas, I think, over and over and over again.
Mhm.
Secession.
Mhm.
If Texas were to actually secede,
Mhm.
I totally could see that becoming a domino effect. I mean, I think a lot of states would look at that and say, all right, let's give it a year, 2 years. Let's use Texas as a proof of concept.
Mhm.
Can they stand on their own?
Yeah.
And once that's been established that they can,
Mhm.
and they've secured all of their borders, they've created their own currency, and I think other states would be like, all right, I'm on board. Like
Mhm.
New Hampshire, some states like South Dakota, I think would be totally on board, but they're completely landlocked, right? So you might have to have like South Dakota. I sounded very South Dakotian right there.
You really did, dude.
South Dakota.
I was like,
Um,
whoa, it's male Sarah Palin.
like some states that are landlocked would have to kind of join with other states that maybe had ports
Mhm.
or other ways of being able to provide trade
Yeah.
from other states or other nations.
Mhm.
But it's going to be that domino effect.
Yeah.
Once
And
the proof of concept is done and made, it's only a matter of time before there's just going to be a mass exodus.
Yeah. Well, and like here's the thing. Once national divorce happens once, it's going to happen a bunch, you know, because like national divorce, like we can't split it down the Mississippi, you know.
Right.
There's too many left wingers and right wingers on both sides of that line, you know.
There's a lot of purple states.
Yeah. And so like once it happens the one time, you know, and let's say they go down whatever fucking longitude goes right smack dab in the middle of our country, you know, once they hit that, then every state that still exists on both sides, all right, is going to be like, well, we have all the liberals in this city in Kentucky and all the Republicans in this city in Kentucky. So we're going to split Kentucky in half. And then we're going to split Ohio in half, which isn't real, by the way. Then we're going to split Michigan in half, to where you have not 50 states, you have 100 states, all the Democrat and Republican side of those states, and it's going to keep dividing more and more and more.
Some might lump together, and sometimes some states may divide. Like, I guarantee if California, so let's, again, hypothetical, Trump wins the election in 2024, and California votes to secede from the union. All right.
By the way, I don't think Donald Trump has a chance.
I honestly, I think that they're gonna
it's gonna be Ron DeSantis for the Republicans.
I'm kind of surprised they haven't tried to. But DeSantis is too rogue, I think, for the Republican Party. I mean, they need a Jeb Bush. They need a puppet.
No, but he's not Trump enough though, because he's got connections with the establishment.
Yeah, it's amazing that he hasn't announced.
He's got the likability of the GOP in Florida. All right, he has them sold, but dude. He's got establishment connections. He's the best of both worlds for the Republican Party. Yeah. It's DeSantis all the way.
And that's definitely going to have to be another episode when it comes.
Hell yeah.
Because I think we need to
get Hector back on to talk about that.
Hector and the war between the Republicans, because 2024 I think is going to be a war. And because I don't think the establishment wants Donald Trump back in power or back as a president, even the Republican establishment. So yeah, that's going to be a totally another episode. And maybe we'll definitely have to talk about that.
Yeah.
But anyhow, when it comes back to a national divorce, it's only going to take one, and the dominoes will fall. Yep. Now, what pushes that one state over the edge? I don't know. It could be a dollar collapse. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
If the dollar devalues fast, and I talked about CBDC on the last episode that I did solo, but there are the BRICS nations are talking about having a central. I mean, they've already developed a central bank, and Saudi Arabia has applied. There's been multiple other countries. I mean, they're already the countries in BRICS already occupy. I mean, I think they have 40% of the world population in their countries, and that's 5. I mean, India and Russia, and are big, huge. But if they do create an independent currency that is backed by commodities, because that's what I've been reading about.
Yeah.
And commodities could be gold, could be silver, could be platinum, could be oil, could be, but it's backed by something physical. The acceleration in the U.S. hegemony and dollar collapse is going to be 1,000-fold.
Yeah.
And when that happens, and all of these countries who are holding dollars in reserves to buy oil no longer need those dollars because they're going to use a different currency, and they throw those dollars out on the open market.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah.
And it could literally be within 6 months. The US dollar all of a sudden collapses.
Yeah.
That's where a Texas or a New Hampshire are we're not going to force our constituents, our citizens, to spend $20 for a pack of ramen. So screw the United States.
Yeah.
We're out.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, going to be the big turning point in American history.
And that's going to be at the point that they can't print their way out of it.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to be able to afford, with the rapid inflation, they're not going to be able to afford the planes and missiles that they're going to need from Boeing and fucking, all those weapons manufacturers.
Well, just to sustain the almost, what is it, 900 bases around the world? They're
Jesus
the tax
Christ,
bases.
900? My God.
I mean, if you're trying to
there's 217 countries. We have 900 bases around the world.
Yeah, it's insane. It is literally insane. Like
I think
the
200 is actually the
Pentagon's,
bones, or the 217 is actually the amount of bones in the human body. You're the medical guy.
yeah, I'm gonna look up
I think
like
there's like
U.S.
235 countries.
bases around the world.
By the way, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm so rambly and jumping from topic to topic.
I love this. I mean, the fact that like we can just catch up and have like this discussion, and then like this is a 2-hour episode. Like,
yeah. Well, like
move over, Joe Rogan.
I should say this as a preface. An hour and 34 minutes into this episode, I am super high.
All right, yeah, I gotta. I want to say it's.
Uh-oh, you just froze.
Oh, all of a sudden,
Ah! All right, so my black friend Ben,
all of a sudden, I lost audio.
my token black co-host Ben.
Damn it! I think that means it's time to call it quits.
Okay, all right. Well, this is hilarious because on my end it's just a black screen. That's why I kept calling you my black friend.
All right, sign off for me because I can't hear you.
Okay, well, tell you what, I'll start the outro and you can give your plugs. Okay, everybody, this has been We Love the State. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening. Man, it's so goddamn good to get back to recording this podcast. I love doing this podcast. So if you want to follow me on TikTok, you can follow me at Andy_Coons. I'm sorry, at Andy Coons. That is Koons. If you want to follow me on Twitter, where I say all the shit that'll get me kicked off of TikTok, you can follow me on Twitter at Andy_Coons. Hey, Ben, you're back. All right, good deal. He's actually been back for like 30 seconds. I just finally stopped talking enough to realize it. Yeah. What are the plugs you got for us, Ben? Oh, I don't think you can hear me. Okay, so follow Ben on Twitter. He's at Picture This 1979. I want a ton of people to start following him on Twitter. And let's see, go to WeLoveTheState.com. I'm just doing all the plugs. I don't know what that alert that I just got is. Follow Ben on Instagram at Picture This 1979, all one word. Yeah, and thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Can't wait to record the next episode. Take care. Have a great night. We love you guys.